that's new.
Yeah, I think that's a new Zoom feature that they now tell you it's recording. That did that when we recorded our videos this week as well. That was a new, it was new. Look at
That's
Zoom.
good though.
Yeah, it was good.
I like that it announces it so that you don't just have to look up in the top corner to see that somebody is recording what you're saying.
Yeah, and then it also told us when we were stopping, like it felt like a good, okay, good, I did do that right.
All right, I think we'll get started. Hello and welcome to Women Who Advocate for Mental Health and Healing. I'm Dawn Zeidemont. I am the Operations Director for Women Who and have been volunteering with Women Who since the start in January of 2019. Women Who believes in empowering any female identifying, and non-binary individual, no matter their background, income, race, identity, profession, or status, through providing our resources, opportunities, and education. We connect the West Michigan community through people, partnerships, and education, and of course, fun, with the focus on business and lifestyle. We do this by fostering connection in our Women Who Facebook group, our monthly newsletters, and then also having free activities. The next one, other than this one, is our Women Who Hike series, where we hike local parks to connect with nature and our Women Who community. Another is our monthly pod club, where we discuss a chosen podcast. And the main one is our monthly themed events. For these events, our speakers are paid, but our events are free. This is because we have amazing sponsors. For the past 6 months, Women Who has been sponsored by Mortgage Up, which is owned by our own Maria Tornga, our events director. She is an experienced realtor with a background in finance and knows the ins and outs of this wacky market we're in right now. Her company, Mortgage Up, is a local mortgage broker who ensures you make the right financing choice for you and your family. Exceeding expectations is their ultimate goal. You may have heard this market is crazy and you need a trusted partner, and you have found one in Maria Tornga. So whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, building a dream home, or looking to invest, reach out to Maria Tornga at Mortgage Up Loans. You can reach her at, you can call or text her at 773-750-6214 or visit her website, mortgageuploans.com. Thank you, Maria, for your sponsorship. On to the Women Who Advocate for Mental Health and Healing. This event is near and dear to my heart because I have a lot of family members and friends who have mental health issues, and some are even unable to work because of this disease. It seems really easy to go to the doctor when you have a cough or a sore ankle, but mental health is still something that many people don't feel comfortable discussing with their physicians or even their friends, or the mental disease itself prevents them from wanting or accepting care. The panelists here will be discussing many different aspects of mental health and healing, so we can reduce the stigma of mental health. If you have questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. And after our panelists speak, we will announce the winners of our giveaways, and then we'll go into the question and answer period. Our 2 giveaways are 2 journals from the Legacy Mental Health and a $50 Amazon e-gift card from Resilience Therapy. Our first speaker is Dr. Char Newton, Ph.D., LP, who is a fully licensed psychologist and owner of Legacy Mental Health, PLLC. She also works at Pine Rest Mental Health Services, where she serves as clinical supervisor. Dr. Newton has over 10 years of experience in clinical what's going on? She has 10 years of experience in clinical, academic, and community settings, including teaching experience at both the undergrad and graduate levels of higher education, and is a member of the Michigan Board of Psychology, who was appointed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Thank you for being here, Dr. Newton, and continue. And you'll have to unmute yourself there.
Would you like me to start presenting?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. First of all, I'd just like to thank Women Who for having the vision to put together this program. We have gone through a lot this past year and a half. We have what people call the twin pandemics. We've dealt with COVID-19 on one hand, and then on the other hand, we've dealt with the social political culture that has been within our society. And so I think this topic is very relevant. So thank you for inviting me. Today I'll be talking about understanding mental health, mental illness, and how to break down stigma. We'll go ahead to the next slide. And that was just my bio, which has already gone over. Alrighty, so we'll hop right in there. What is mental health? When we think about mental health, it really is the emotional and psychological and our social well-being. And it's impacted by our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, right? So if I'm feeling depressed, that's going to impact how I think, how I feel, and then how I behave. So my thoughts may become, hopeless, helpless. My feelings may become sad or even angry. Sometimes we see anger manifest itself when people are depressed. And then my behavior may become more of social isolation, not engaging in things that I enjoy or once liked. So when we talk about mental health, we're really talking about emotional, psychological, and our social well-being. And it changes over our lifespan, and it can be affected by numerous factors such as biology. When we look at the research, what we know is that there's a high concordance rate, like if we have a family member who may be dealing with a mental health diagnosis. And that doesn't mean that always that, you will say have depression if someone in your family, it just makes it more likely. And so biology, our genetics kind of predisposes us and makes us more vulnerable to mental health issues. Another factor that can impact our mental health is life experiences. If we deal with things such as, depression, or not depression, but necessarily the divorce, which may cause grief and loss. If we deal with things connected to, adjustment, maybe we move to a new town, or we experience the birth of a child. These are all life experiences that can impact and possibly even throw off our mental health. And I like to say kind of knock us off base. So we're going to take a look at next, the prevalence of mental health. According to NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, Mental Health, nearly 1 in 5 US adults live with a mental illness. So that's 51.5 million people, and that's as of 2019. And I want to kind of look at the chart that's there. You'll notice that females are more likely to report mental health diagnosis, meaning they sought out maybe a psychiatrist or a therapist or a clinician to seek treatment. But I would argue these numbers may be higher than what they are because sometimes people suffer in silence, meaning they don't seek out the help from a mental health professional. And also, as we talk about stigma, we have to think about it from the perspective of males. Sometimes within our society, we tell males things such as suck it up, man up, men don't talk about feelings. And these stereotypes essentially that we give off to individuals may make it more likely that males don't enter into counseling. So that's why those numbers may also be lower for males. Then also, as we look at the age group, we see 18 to 25. How we kind of make sense of that data, if you think about it, some diagnosis we can't actually give until you're a certain age group, like thought disorders, and we don't really see them manifest until early adolescent years are over with and you're more into your young adulthood. And also you think about it, if we again go with stigma, if your family's a family that says, we don't talk about feelings, we don't go to counseling, that's not something we do, that 18 to 25 may be a time where people are now getting their own freedom. They may be on a college campus and seeking out a university counseling center to get help. And so we see those numbers higher for young adults. And then the last thing I like to highlight as it relates to just the statistics or prevalence of mental health is that we see white Americans are more likely to seek out help and racial minorities are less likely. And as an African American, again, we go back to stigma, stereotypes. Sometimes there may be unhealthy messages given within certain communities that stop individuals from seeking help. Like, for example, in the Black community, church is very important. So people will say unhealthy messages such as, just trust Jesus, just have faith. If you don't have faith, then, you would go to counseling, right? But if you have faith, you just kind of manage to trust God. And I have a friend and she often says, sometimes you definitely need Jesus, but you may need a therapist too. So you don't have to necessarily cancel one out, but both can be instrumental. And so mental illness is really, when we look at it, it's a collection of diagnosis. We look at mood disorders such as bipolar, major depression, anxiety disorders such as generalized anxiety, where people have anxiety about a variety of different things, versus social anxiety, where someone may be more amped to be anxious in social situations where they have to interact. So mental health is really, it's a broad category. It even includes things like ADHD, eating disorders. But the key thing is that we notice significant changes in the way people think, their emotions, and their behaviors. Many times their thought processes and their emotions and their behaviors are not healthy, or they may be decompensated because of struggling with issues connected to mental health. And then it impacts them in many different domains, such as you may notice like your work or your social life or your relationships become off because of the mental diagnosis. And when we think about mental illness, it's important to understand that it's a continuum where someone may be dealing with a mild case of, say, depression versus someone with severe. And we think mild, we may think, well, maybe I just feel kind of blue. I feel a little bit down. Maybe some days I'm tearful, and I don't have interest in things, right? So that may be more mild, versus a severe case where someone may be having like suicidal ideation and plans to harm themselves. Or they may be, their ADLs, their adult daily living, such as taking a shower, brushing their teeth. They may not even be getting out of bed. So, there's a continuum when we think about mental health, that it can be mild. I think that's important for us to keep that in mind. Keep that in mind as we think about people's baseline, whether that be our family and friends, like as it relates to the severity of the dysfunction. So here's the part I really want to highlight for you guys: how to break down stigma. It was mentioned earlier in the introduction by Don that, our mental health is just as important as our physical health. Like if we had a broke arm or injured foot, we'd probably go to our doctor to get it taken care of. But when our emotional health gets thrown off, we're less likely to seek out help. And sometimes that's because of the stigma concerning mental health. So here are a couple of things I feel that we as advocates, as individuals who may have loved ones who have mental illness, or just as a supportive friend, can consider. So first of all, is try to be understanding, and understanding that mental illness is not the totality of who someone is. So it shouldn't define the entire person, right? We have to begin to look at the person's strengths, their competencies. While you may have depression, that's just a part of you, but there are other strengths. You may be creative, you may be a great mom, you may be a great community advocate. Whatever it may be, we need to way to break down stigma is to create understanding and to encourage people to not define themselves by their mental illness, because there's so much more to the individual. The other piece I would say would be education, educating others about mental illness. And part of this involves speaking up and being brave enough to talk about, if you or someone you love has dealt with a mental illness, being able to break down the stereotypes and the negative generalizations that come from it. And one of the resources I wanted to share with you guys is because how do you educate yourself? There are a lot of different, I mentioned NAMI, NAMI, they have a lot of great resources. Also here in Grand Rapids, a huge behavioral health provider, Pine Rest, they also have on their website, pinerest.org, they have a link called resources. So if you just go to pinerest.org, click on resources, it pulls up almost every diagnosis, and it's PDFs about the diagnosis, ways to seek help, key warning signs, and it even includes things for adolescent and children like self-injurious behavior, bullying. So that's a great resource as far as just a starting point for education. The next thing is don't isolate. When we isolate, we're left with our thoughts, right? And that's one of the first things I often work with my clients on, like who can be your support system? So if you're dealing with mental illness or you know someone, encouraging them to build up what I call a village of people who can maybe share, or that even just get them out the house or get them involved in productive activity. That is crucial. Because when we isolate, we miss out on the ability to, number one, go outward and to focus ourselves on others, and maybe even find more strengths that we have within ourselves. The last thing I want to emphasize this, is the idea that it's okay to not be okay. We tell people, and as women, We often, talk about superwoman syndrome, where we got the S on our chest and we're just taking on the world, but at the same time, we're running on empty. It's okay to not be okay and to ask for help. And I think that's how we really break down stigma, when we say, you know what, I've dealt with anxiety, or I've dealt with depression, because then it makes it okay for the conversation to occur and for other people to hear your story and to possibly be helped by your story. That's my presentation. I did include my contact information if you want to reach out to me. I don't know if there's time for questions, but that's kind of the end.
Thank you, Dr. Newton. I think we're going to proceed to the next speaker. And if you do have questions, please put the questions in the chat and we'll get to them after everybody has presented. I just want to make sure that we get through everybody before we have too many questions. All right, our next speaker is Ebony Newton. She is
Ebony Crane.
Oh, sorry. I am so
I wish I had a
sorry.
PhD, girl. Go ahead, throw that somewhere. I need that.
Our next speaker is Ebony Crane, LMSW. She is a licensed mental health therapist and owner of Resilience Therapy in Grand Rapids. She was formerly labeled as a juvenile delinquent, but her experiences have led her to becoming a licensed clinical social worker. Ebony Crane is passionate about advocacy and empowering the resilience of oppressed individuals. Thank you for being here, Ebony. And
thank you.
ahead.
All
And
right.
Ebony, you've requested that we unmute ourselves and laugh at your jokes, so you can
Yes.
verbally.
If you'd like to
hear us,
unmute
right?
yourself, you can laugh at Ebony's jokes.
Listen.
Very happy.
I need to feel the energy, honey.
Ebony would like a little interaction, folks. So go ahead and unmute.
Put a little laughing emoji or something so I know y'all vibing with me, Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me share my presentation here. Share this. All right, maybe. There we go. Should pop up. So so thank you for the introduction. Ebony Crane, fully licensed mental health therapist. I am also EMDR trained, owner of Resilience Therapy. So what kind of, I'm gonna take you guys back and give you a little self-disclosure here, right? So I went through quite a bit of things as a juvenile, right? So I, got sentenced to like 90 days on probation, and it turned to 4 years, not because I was continuously breaking the law, but because they get involved with those family dynamics, right? And so, if things aren't, I had 7 siblings, and, if things aren't right with the family, they stayed involved. Back then, they had some money to blow. Now they, money's a little bit tighter now. But, in addition to that, I was also a teen parent, right? I remember a math teacher pulling me out and essentially telling me that I was going to live off the state for the rest of my life, right? So I was already rebellious, but I kind of used that rebellion to go against everything that was, every label that was placed on me. So in addition to that, I had also went through some traumatic experiences, and I remember going to a therapist, Caucasian female, and, maybe the second, third time seeing her, she had essentially told me like, hey, there's nothing more I can do for you. You're very self-aware, you're good to go. Now, like I mentioned, I was a juvenile delinquent, teen parent, had a whole bunch of trauma and, that I had experienced. Of course I was in survival mode. Of course I knew how to, wear a mask and put on this facade, right? Like there was a lack of cultural competency. In addition to, the representation, there was no effort to build this rapport, right? So her just only seeing me, 2 or 3 times, that in addition to other experiences, I had a lot of different probation officers and they were all Caucasian. In addition to everything that I had experienced, it was basically like, at that moment is when there was a disconnect to society, right? And so that's when I was like, you know what? I need to be who I needed, right? So essentially I went to school, got my bachelor's in criminal justice, and I really had focused on that label of juvenile delinquents. as I started getting into my master's degree, my eyes just was widened by all these oppressed communities. And I'm like, oh, heck no, I need to help single moms. I want to be there for these people, you know, individuals that are trafficked, domestic. I need all of this. Native Americans went through some stuff. I'm like, oh yeah. So my eyes basically widened and I was like, okay, I know what this is about, right? So I entered into private practice. And then as I was like contracted with an organization, and then I winged out, right? So I opened this business. Well, I was trying to find my niche. And so I studied and I had read, and I had also utilized EMDR with my therapist. I think everybody should have a therapist. And I was just like, I was in disbelief, right? So let me tell you a couple of the statistics, and I'm bad at clicking. So I guess we already passed this slide, y'all. We on to this one. Okay, so as I was reading on EMDR, I'm trying to just find a niche here. You know, I had already utilized CBT for a long time, just a lot of strengths, like different modalities and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know, I'm going to open this practice, need to have a niche, right? So I started reading these statistics, and one of them said, you know, results show that 100% of single trauma, so these were all samples, you know, all evidence-based things that are actually on emdria.org. Results show that 100% of single trauma and 77% of multiple trauma survivors were no longer diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after 6 50-minute sessions, okay? Another statistic said that caught my attention. 3 90-minute sessions of EMDR eliminated post-traumatic stress disorder in 90% of rape victims, okay? And the last one that really caught my attention was follow-up at 15 months showed maintenance of positive treatment effects with an 84% remission of PTSD diagnosis. So remission means that at one point they had met criteria and now they no longer do. That's amazing, right? As I discovered more and more, once again, I was in disbelief. And I started looking and doing some research, like, hold on a second, this is amazing. Let me see how many clinicians are practicing this. So at this time, there were 28 clinicians in Kent County that were EMDR trained, okay? And I went to their websites and, just kind of scoped it out, just doing some research here, not stalking. But out of these 28 clinicians, not one of them was a person of color, okay? And on their websites, not many even mentioned that they accepted Medicaid. So this sparked a flame, y'all. For one, there's no representation, right? But for two, why wasn't there more clinicians that took Medicaid? So statistics show that people of color and lower income individuals are at an increased chance of experiencing something traumatic. So think about historical adversity, right? Which includes slavery, sharecropping, like race-based exclusion for health, education, social and economic resources. So there's all these disparities experienced by Black and African-American people today that started then. So your socioeconomic status basically equates to, and it's very well linked to your mental health. People who are impoverished, homeless, incarcerated, substance use, right? They're at a higher risk of poor mental health. So here's a few statistics that kind of support this current barrier that's out here in society. Black and African-American people are more often diagnosed with schizophrenia and less often diagnosed with mood disorders compared to white people with the same symptoms. Additionally, they are offered medication and therapy at the lower rates than the general population. Next statistic. Black and African-American people are overrepresented in our jails and prisons. Black and African Americans make up about 13% of the US population, but nearly 40% of the prison population. The imprisonment rate for Black and African American men was more than 6 times greater than that of white men. For Black women, double that of white women, okay? So Black and African American people with mental health conditions, specifically those involving psychosis, are more likely to be in jail or prison than people of other races. Listen, if I'm not dropping some bombs on y'all right now, I feel like I'm preaching. Last statistic that really supports this barrier here, right? 58.2% of Black and African-American young adults, so age 18 to 25, and 50% of adults 26 to 49 with serious mental illness did not receive treatment. And 12% of Black and African-American adults who had a doctor's office or a clinic visit over the past year had difficulty getting the needed care, tests, or treatment compared to 6.8% of white adults, okay? This is why representation matters. This is why cultural competency is a must. Okay, I recall when I began being trained in EMDR, and an individual said to me, this is a specialty, like this is in demand. You can make money utilizing EMDR. And then they said, as long as you limit your Medicaid clients. I had to remind myself I was in a professional setting, but I was livid. And you best believe that I professionally advocated and assured that my people, my community, will not be left behind. Not under resilience therapy, they won't, okay? One of my favorite quotes is Malcolm X, and it says, usually when people are sad, they don't do anything. They just cry over their condition. But when they get angry, they bring about a change. I was furious. I am furious. And with statistics of efficacy like this, and with statistics of it being inaccessible to my people, to our community, I was determined to make a change. So, like I've mentioned, I'm EMDR trained, I'm African-American, and I accept all the Medicaid, bring them here, okay? So we know that, this EMDR has this amazing efficacy rate. So what exactly is it? So this model is basically based off of a theory called adaptive information processing, right? And it insists that our brain has a natural way to recover from traumatic memories and events. This process involves communication between the amygdala, which is the alarm signal for stressful events, the hippocampus, which assists with learning, including memories about safety and danger, and the prefrontal cortex, right, which analyzes and controls behavior and emotion. While many times traumatic experiences can be managed and resolved spontaneously, they may not be processed without help. So for example, have you ever seen an adult that may throw a fit, essentially, maybe get very belligerent, throwing things, crying hysterically over something maybe that others would consider minute, right? Well, that's actually because most of the time it can be linked back to an experience that they had previously. So over here, there's a trigger on the left side of the brain. Okay, over here is the right side. This adult knows the coping skills. They're very well in tune at this point. I could go take a run. I could do this. I could journal. I could take a bubble bath, right? They're aware of the coping skills, but when they're triggered right here, that unprocessed memory stands as a barrier, okay? So they're not able to access it. EMDR is utilized to reprocess that experience, okay? And those triggers to allow them to access coping skills in the future. Stress responses are a part of our natural fight, flight, and freeze instincts, okay? When distress from a disturbing event remains, those upsetting images, thoughts, and emotions can create feelings of like being overwhelmed or being back in that moment or being frozen in time, right? EMDR therapy helps the brain process these memories and allows normal healing to resume. The experience is still remembered, but the fight, flight, or freeze response from the original event is resolved. Okay, traumatic memories and events that can be processed are big T traumas, little T traumas, and C traumas. And here's some examples, right? So big T traumas are considered natural disasters, war zone experience, sexual assaults, child abuse, death of loved ones, physical trauma. Little T traumas are considered like dog bites, dental procedures, routine surgeries, child abuse, death of loved ones, falls, car accidents. And C traumas are like multiple deployments, forms of oppression, racism, poverty, homophobia, domestic violence, or witnessing the aforementioned. Right now, I would like to say that though these are examples of trauma, and this is gonna go against every textbook you probably done read, but what I have experienced is that trauma, the definition of something, traumatic, is the individual's perception of it. Okay, so something that's traumatic for you may not be traumatic for the next individual. It's about your experiences. It's about, coping skills, your resiliency, as you will. your support system can assist with some of these things, and that will lessen or increase the impact, right? So let's talk a little bit about the process of EMDR. So EMDR is so amazing, guys. I'll talk about it forever, but I know I'm on a time cap. So listen, it really focuses on, it's a 3-pronged protocol. What we do is you come into me for something that's triggering you. Maybe you come in for depression, anxiety, whatever. You're having a symptom of something, right? We pull it back. So we go to that first prong, which is the past. So your past experiences and memories. EMDR does nothing but reprocesses memories and experiences. Your brain does the natural healing. It's so amazing. So we go back, we look at the past, and that's your treatment plan is all based on memories. And then once all those phases are completed, then we go to the present, and then we also do a future template. So to prepare you for the future. Okay, but shouldn't be no triggers in the future because it desensitizes those. So in phase 1 and phase 2, this is like the genuine rapport building phases, right? So I'm just getting your history. I'm getting all up in your business. We're building rapport. I'm getting this holistic perspective of you, your family dynamic, substance use, but also I have to look at your dissociation rates and levels, right? Because if we're floating back to an experience, I need you to stay present with me and grounded with me. This is not hypnosis. You're right there with me. You're in a safe space. And when I need to bring you back and tell you, hey, you're in this room with me, you're not there, I need you to be able to come to that. Okay. And also recognizing when you've had enough and you use that stop signal. Phase 3, this is where we look, you give me a SUDS, which is a units of disturbance. So you'll give me 0 to 10. This is self-report. I tell you, how disturbing is this memory to you right now? You'll tell me 0 to 10. 0, no disturbance. 10 is the highest disturbance possible. So you'll give me a number. We also come up with the image. Once again, these experiences can sometimes there'll just be an image there, right? So I ask you to come up with an image, emotions, any sensations in your body. This addresses somatic symptoms. It's a entire body thing. Because sometimes, have you ever thought about something and then like you get sick to your stomach? This is what I'm talking about. It addresses all of that. Okay, so I'll go through, I'll get any thoughts about it. I'll get your units of disturbance. I'll get the image, and yeah, any emotions. Okay, and then after that, and I desensitize you. You may get very irritated because we continuously doing it. And all I do is I say, okay, think about that. I barely talk in the session, y'all. I tell you, go with that. And your brain does everything. It'll take you to where you need to go. You might be thinking, oh, that's not relevant. But I'm just like, just report it to me. You need to be completely honest with me about everything that you're thinking about as you're watching this light. You'll also have some pulsators and they just vibrate. When the light goes to the right, this hand will vibrate. And when it goes to the left hand will vibrate. And all it's doing is allowing the left side and the right side of your brain to communicate and coordinate. And once again, think of that barrier. You're going through it, okay? You're breaking it down. You're healing from it. So, yep. So then after we desensitize you from it, we will go to, there's also a negative cognition, okay? So there's a negative belief about yourself typically. So maybe let's just say I'm a bad person. So then when we get to phase 5, so say we've desensitized you from an experience that you had, when we get to phase 5, we go in and we look at a positive cognition, okay? So this is typically going to be the opposite of what you believe about yourself. So it's really funny when individuals try to come up with this. They're like, girl, I ain't never gonna believe that about myself. I'm a good person. Okay, we're gonna see what type of magic this is. So, phase 5, that negative cognition, it's basically transformed into a positive cognition, and we install that. And when I say install, that's just the light going back and forth. Okay, then we do a body scan, and that's just you reporting to me any sensations that you're having in your body. If we finish the memory, we'll go to phase 7. But even if we don't, we go to phase 7. And then I do some grounding stuff to just kind of make sure you okay before you walk out of my office, okay? And then phase 8 is only utilized every session, but the first one, because we're just reevaluating, right? The first session, we're just setting up for it. After that, it's reevaluation, because interesting, after the session, for the next 72 hours, you continue to process everything that we spoke about, okay? It's something called like REM sleep. And actually in your REM sleep, your eyes move back and forth. And essentially that's what you're doing in EMDR. But every day, it's the deepest sleep, and we all have REM sleep, and it just processes the information that you took in today. And so if we're working on a memory, chances are you may process, you're going to have some dreams. And that brings me to, well, no. This, I want to give you guys one example, and then I'm going to tell you the side effects. You're like, see, I knew it was too good to be true. So, actually, and I did get permission to share this, it's very general. There was an individual that came to me and said that they were having nightmares, right? At the beginning of the session, they told me it was a level 8. This individual was crying, panting, sweating when they thought about the dream. It was a reoccurring dream, okay? And it was just the fear of being murdered in a car. She would not drive in that car, or drive in a car. She wouldn't do none of that. This fear was taking over her life, okay? I spent, typically my sessions were only 60 minutes. I spent 90 minutes with her. I got her down to a 2. She went from an 8, crying, sweating, frantic, to a 2 in 90 minutes, you guys. And she was laughing at herself. She was laughing at herself and saying, why was I just crying about this dream? What was going on? Y'all, it was great. It was great. And the only reason we couldn't get her down any lower is because she was like, well, the dream may still pop up. And that's the truth. It could still come. But then I gave her some skills to change the ending. So, but also with EMDR, there does not have to be words. I barely say anything. Okay. So this is good for individuals that have experienced something traumatic where they were not verbal. So it focuses on the nonverbal thing. I'll give you guys an example. I had a client where one of their parents killed the other parents. They was, under age 1. They weren't verbal. They couldn't express themselves. They didn't know what was going on. But guess what? This still impacted their mental health to this day. And this individual is way older now. Well, because they didn't have, an opinion or didn't really, all they felt was like this energy, and they didn't even have an image. They created this image of what it would look like. We were able to process that. So it even works for nonverbal. It's great. Now to the side effects, right? There's 2 of them. One of them is you can have some vivid dreams. If we're processing something, it's typically ain't gonna be nothing pleasant, okay? And you can have some vivid dreams about it because once again, your brain is continuing to attempt to get through that, to reprocess the memory, taking out the things that are needed and throwing away the things that are not needed from that experience. So that is one side effect. Your only homework assignment that you will ever get in EMDR is to write down your dreams and report them to me. They tell a lot of where your brain is at, even if you think they ain't relevant. It can be the ice cream truck. Tell me whatever dream you are experiencing, okay? Other side effect. I do work with the courts. So with the victims advocate unit. So they call me if there's an individual that has experienced something traumatic. Now, when they first reached out to me, I had to have a conversation with the prosecutor because one of the side effects is that you are desensitized. So if this is your witness and you put them on the stand and they're working with me, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to be frantically crying. That emotion will not be there. They're going to remember it. Nothing happens to their brain. They remember the experience, but they're like, yeah, it happened. And so if you have a jury trial, the jury going to be like, oh, they're lying because they base their testimony off of emotions when it's a jury trial. Okay. So typically when I get some victims from the court, I have to have that conversation with the prosecutor. Like, look, y'all sure? Because y'all know I'm about to do some things with my people. We about to get through this. It's very good for my client, but it may not be good for their case. Right. But so this can address everything. Depression, anxiety, because once again, we can pull it all back to something that happened earlier, typically, most of the time, okay? You'll be surprised. It could be you got social anxiety because in the 3rd grade, somebody bullied you one time. You'll be surprised, y'all. You'll be surprised how things, just because your brain didn't process that experience, okay? So I felt that this modality was essential to healing and reprocessing of individuals. And so that's why resilience therapy was based on this modality when I was just one person. 2 months in, you guys, I was so blessed. 90% of my clients were word of mouth, man. I got a couple off psychology today, but I'm telling you, this colleague was telling this colleague, I'm just like, that's the biggest compliment you can give your therapist is word of mouth. So I was like, oh, y'all like me out here, So I loved it, right? But on the flip side, there's only one of me in resilience therapy. There was only just one person, the owner. And so I found myself having a waiting list, and I was referring out 2 to 3 people a day. And I was like, how can I, better assist the community? So I took 2 amazing clinicians on board, and I do have their images pulled up here. One is Candace Martin. She's an amazing colleague. I've actually done some speeches with her to some juveniles. And then the other is Elizabeth Yesikoff, and she has some great ideas for interventions that she would like to propose, and she's a strong ally. So all 3 of us, we are non-traditional therapists, okay? We pride ourselves on being allies, advocates, and encouraging the resilience of oppressed individuals at their own pace, right? At Resilience Therapy, we surpass the expectations of a typical mental health organization because we believe that rapport is 50% of the entire therapeutic experience. The other 50% is the amount of effort that an individual puts into it, okay? Some people aren't ready, and that's fine. But guess what? That relationship, I'm gonna tell you guys, if you can't trust your therapist, if you aren't comfortable crying, being embarrassed, if you're not comfortable sharing your fears, being honest, the overall therapeutic experience will be impacted, okay? I have worked with individuals that didn't remember not one coping skill, y'all, but guess what they did remember? They remembered that relationship, that rapport, and that environment that they felt safe in. They could be their self in, okay? So, that is just amazing, the energy and just, the message that we're attempting to put out there. Also, resilience therapy is able to increase accessibility to EMDR, right? Because with me only taking 30 clients, and then I work a full-time job as well for the VA, I can only do so much, and I got kids, so that's the cherry on top, right? But my colleagues, so Miss Candace, Miss Elizabeth, what we can do is I brought them on with the point of creating accessibility, okay? So for example, if somebody is Candace's client and she's doing CBT with them and they create this treatment plan and she's attempting all these interventions, but the outcome is not changing, guess what? Candace can come to me and she can say, hey, I think, we need to try a different intervention. I'll fit that client in. Y'all seen the statistics, give them 2 or 3 EMDR sessions and then send them right back to Candace, and they do not have to go on my waiting list because they're already under resilience therapy, okay? Our care is already being handled. Their care is being handled here, so they have access to that, and I will fit them in, give them a couple sessions, go right on to Candace and continue that progress, okay? So, yeah, I guess that is about it, that we are empowering resilience through accessibility, and we look forward to continuing to service this community. The clients, it's so funny because the clients be feeling all honored with me, like, oh, you could be out there. No, I feel honored when I get to service them, and that's genuine. The fact that you trust me with your secrets, the fact that you're vulnerable with me, man, I feel honored. I'm like, what? Me? Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. I got you. I'm gonna meet you right where you at for sure. So now I'm gonna ask that each one of you, support this mission. Please go like the Facebook page if you have not already, and just spread the word, right? Join us in advocating for our community and letting individuals know that there is a safe space out there for our people. When I say our people, I'm talking about the entire community. Okay, I'm talking about LGBTQIA. I'm talking about oppressed individuals. I'm talking about all of that. Okay, there's a safe space for our people, and it's up to us to normalize receiving mental health services. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Ebony, for your eye-opening statistics and that EMDR walkthrough. That was great. Our third speaker is Janee Beville, MA, LPC, NCC. She is the owner and lead therapist for Beville Counseling, LLC, where she provides outpatient therapy addressing many concerns such as depression, anxiety, identity development, self-worth, spiritual development, and communication skills. She is also a workshop facilitator and has discussed topics related to diversity awareness, mental and emotional health, and biblical and spiritual lessons. Thanks for being here, Janee.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me again. I echo as well. Thank you, Women Who, for putting on this event and about this topic. I do appreciate the opportunity to be one of the panelists. I have to say first, Ebony, you did that. Thank you. Like, I love how you made it out there.
Girl, thank you.
Yes, yes. I love how you explain EMDR. That is something I often, have to explain as I as well collaborate with other therapists. And so thank you. That was very helpful. I just love your story, and the energy, love it. And then of course to Dr. Newton as well for just giving us the general outline of mental health. I think that I'm such an educator and love of education. And so just teaching about mental health and just the general terms is important to me as well. And so I appreciate just being able to follow behind these two wonderful colleagues of mine. Just met them, but I already know we're gonna be working together. So I'm following behind again as a fellow clinician here in Grand Rapids. I am born and raised right here in the city, proud graduate of Ottawa Hills High School. And then also, that's right, and then also Western Michigan University. And I am coming just kind of speaking honestly from my experience as a Black woman who became a therapist or was already really a therapist, but I just went to school and did all the things. But it's always been in me, that kind of thing. So just coming to just speak about that and how I really came to this and why I advocate for mental health, not just from a career standpoint, but as part of my purpose and ministry and who I am. And so I got into therapy, or I should say, for me, it was counseling. I took my first psychology class in high school and immediately intrigued by our brains and why we do the things we do. Like, just it was like, this is so interesting. And so it caught me, and something in me, I never engaged with a counselor, even though we had school counselors, but it was all about getting your classes scheduled and those things, not like an actual therapist. And so I myself struggled as a child, just being very insecure, comparing myself, just quiet, not comfortable with who I am. And I knew I wanted a therapist. Unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity then, but paired with taking that class and knowing the value of having an unbiased person listen to me, like actually hear me and not speak over me or tell me how I feel or what I think, I knew that's what I wanted to do from a junior in high school. And that's been the plan, been the goal. And I'm so thankful that I can say that that's where my life has led me to. Have I questioned it along the way and had some stumbles? Yes. But just knowing that was the plan that I put in my mind then, it led me to be where I am today. And it's amazing because if you knew me then, if anyone knew me, I was very quiet. I would tell people I want to be a therapist and they're like, you don't talk. How are you going to talk to people? But I just knew it was there. I wanted to do it because I wanted to help people and I wanted to be the listening ear and support. And so thankfully, it just, I was able to follow that despite what other people may have thought about me. And that's just a little nugget for you, and building self-awareness and, all that. So yeah, I went to Western, did all the things, like I said, jumped through the hoops. I often say that, again, being a therapist wasn't something they taught me. They just, gave me the tools to learn, the theories and where this, about mental health and where all these things come from, and even through history. But just the kind of what Ebony shared, like the relationship with people, that's personal. I can't tell you what it's like in anyone else's office. I can only say that with me, I bring me to the table. You're doing therapy with Janee. I can't tell you about anyone else. And so that means you're going to get me. You're going to get my experiences. They're going to speak to how I present things and what I use to treat and what I use to answer. I often tell my clients first session, I am human. I do not like being considered an expert. I'm working with people. We are fascinating creatures and we are always changing and shifting, and we don't know too much about who we are anyway. So how can I come in as an expert to tell you what to do? I don't want that role at all. So I always say, if you can't accept me as human, then we can't work together. But if you can see that I am in this with you, that I too have my own therapist as well, for years, for various reasons, and as life has happened, you know, it is something that I really believe and live, like, truly. And so just know that being a therapist was something I think was just part of my story. It had to be. I do believe in changing, so if I ever want to change careers, we can do that. But for now, this is what we're doing. And so I kind of am getting to this, and I say as a Black woman, because again, kind of as Ebony mentioned, you go into, you know, higher education, especially in the mental health field, you don't see anyone that looks like us. I took my classes for grad school at Western Michigan here downtown, and majority, I had one Black professor, and they taught diversity, like the typical diversity class. So in all the other classes, no other professors. And then as far as other students of color, maybe one, maybe two, like I'm the one, and maybe one other person. And so there was nothing like that. So even from me being in school, I worked for Grand Rapids Public Schools at the time and going to school part-time. So I worked my way through grad school. And so, you know, I'm working with my people, and then I go to school, and code switching was a big deal. If you know what that is, I had to switch how I spoke and how I presented, so that, one, unfortunately, I know there were peers who didn't even consider me a peer, you know, didn't even know, why am I here? This, you know, what is she gonna do as a Black person trying to be a therapist? And so just having to, in a sense, prove myself or feel like I belong there, probably the better way to put that, was very important for me to recognize. And so again, as my colleagues have shared, just knowing that you belong in a space and knowing that there's a need, especially in a community, the Black community. And so it was very important for me to not only graduate and do all the things, but realize that in order to do that, I had to depend on someone else to help me along the way. And what I mean by that is that to be a therapist, you have to be supervised and, you know, watched over in the work you're doing, because you can't just graduate school and go out here and just start working with people. Someone's got to watch over you. And so thankfully I searched and I found a supervisor who was a Black woman, as well, the only one in her organization at the time. And she, again, I'm big about trying to learn from those who've done it. I will share this, as far as in the Black community, we have a hard time sharing the nuggets to get ahead. Sometimes we can get into I had to go through it, I learned, and you're gonna have to learn, you know, like we kind of don't always help each other. And one of my goals as well, not just being a therapist, was helping other therapists come along. And so the way she took me on as a supervisor, and I was her last supervisee, she was like, I'm not doing this again, because she didn't want to do it with me, but I begged her. And I'm so glad she did, because it helped, one, show me that we're needed as supervisors here in Grand Rapids, but also as a Black supervisor. And so that was one of my goals, which I accomplished shortly after completing. And so I've been able to help supervise other therapists as well. And that's a part of the practice that I do also. And so again, important that, you know, for me as a therapist, I bring my experiences to the table. So as a Black woman here in Grand Rapids trying to do therapy, we know Grand Rapids is this big, but big at the same time. And so a lot of what we have to do is networking and, you know, learning the ropes, as we would say. So I did a lot of in-home therapy in the beginning, not what I wanted to do, but it helped teach me about how to, it taught me a lot in my path to getting to where I am now. And so I worked with all, you know, and as we would say, low income households, going into neighborhoods and homes that, one, I grew up in, so it wasn't like a shock, but two, I can understand that culture and what's going on and being able to bring, you know, now my skill set with me. And so that helped bring me to working with, you know, teen moms or just new moms, infants, what Ebony spoke of, trauma, even for children. I worked in infant mental health, and people are always like, so the baby's your client? Yep, yes, they are. Even though they may not be able to speak, but their behavior is saying everything. And so helping parents connect with their children and work on that attachment. I did a lot of that. Worked in schools as well. So just, again, not being the school counselor doing your scheduling, but being the therapist right on site. If you've heard of KSSN at all, which just allows schools in our community to be community schools. So you have all these resources on site. Again, meeting those underrepresented populations, basically. So I was able to do that. And then I eventually moved to private practice. And there, again, the experience of being the only Black therapist among the group and having to educate and having to really help build that cultural competency among my peers there, to where, you know, can we get a, you know, a Black, a person of color admin, you know, when people first come in, who's greeting them? And so that was very important, because with bringing me on, more clients of color were coming along. And so just having to really work with the climate and culture there became a part of my job, not on purpose, it just happened. And so thankfully, since then, more therapists of color have joined, and it was great there. Fast forward to now, we are, you know, 2020 pandemic occurred. And before this happened, I knew going to that group, there was a point where I was going to step out on my own, just knowing the path that I was going. When you get in again into therapy and that whole how are you going to present? How are you going to do therapy? It really speaks to who you are. And my vision started to not match with the group I was with. And so I knew at some point I'm going to have to do what works for me, what's comfortable for me to really shine as a therapist and to help my clients. And so before, you know, pandemic, that was the plan. I was going to do it April 2020, was working on a location and getting everything in order. COVID. And so put that on hold, put the whole office space on hold. And honestly, we didn't know what was going to happen. So it was kind of like, well, one day I will, kind of just waiting. And it took, and I do know I'll say this right now, pandemic did something for mental health. It really blew up and showed people that they really need this support. And so I stayed busy and have been busy since all of this has happened. Schedule has been full, and I'm thankful for it. And so I was working throughout, essential worker, but at home virtually. And it came to a point where a friend of mine, a colleague, was like, you know, you don't have to wait to have an office space to step out on your own. Because I was literally like, I'll just be honest, when you're working with the group, you have to pay so much to the group. I was paying part of my income to reserve a space for seeing clients, and I wasn't even there. So pair that with already the desire to really now step out on my own and do what is natural for me as a therapist. It was like, oh, I can keep doing this from home and like start the story has changed. And so I would say that COVID, it took a lot from us, but it also gave a lot to many of us. And for me, it really helped me move forward as a clinician, but as a woman, as a businesswoman, as a Black woman. And so I was able to step out and start my own practice, Beville Counseling, December 2020, and we've been good. I am so thankful to be at this place now. And even though I'm still virtual, which I have found that I actually love, I am not sure when I'll go back in person. We'll see. But just knowing the freedom to do that. And honestly, if I do in person, doesn't have to be in those four walls. I can meet you in a park. I can meet you at the beach if we need to. Like we can go wherever's comfortable. And that's what I want to do essentially, is offer just non-traditional counseling and therapy and being that support and walking with people. Because again, that's, as Ebony said, relationship is 50% of that. The other is is the work we're doing. And if being in my office isn't helping, then we can do something different. And so that's what I hope to build to eventually. But I have to say too, a part of this and the increased need, especially in the Black community for mental health, is other therapists of color. And so aside from my own practice and building that, I've also partnered with other colleagues of mine, and we were able to launch mental health clinicians of color in Grand Rapids. And that started with us just coming together, some of us would get together, on our own and just kind of network and check in with each other. And then it became like, we need something for us. As therapists of color, we didn't even know how many of us were here. We weren't connected. It was very individualized. And so we wanted to break that. Again, change the story, change the narrative about mental health, especially in the Black community, Brown community, people of color community. So we were able to, this year in February, launch our directory right here in Grand Rapids, where you can go and find a therapist of color, LGBTQIA, just men, like we are out here. And so this is a chance for the community to find us. And it's very important because as those stats were shared earlier by both of them, we, as in Brown people, really haven't been looking for therapists too much in history. Again, like Dr. Newton, right, said that, the church, we pray about it. We'll work, just keep it in the family. We don't talk about those things, as well as just historical harm, trauma done to communities of color as well, that we just don't trust, providers, especially, medical, but also even mental health. That's a new concept for you to be in my business like that. And so it really was about, you must be crazy if you're going, or, we don't get tired, that whole, they must be exhausted. You always think it was more of a white woman's treatment because, just that sense that Black women are just strong Black women and we don't get tired. We can just keep going and take it. But no, we get tired. We are tired. Let me just say that right now, for various reasons. And so our goal with all of that, and not just with clinicians of color in Grand Rapids, but also for me, Beville Counseling, is I'm just about helping people be the best version of them. And I truly believe, again, that this was meant for me to do. And it just goes beyond, again, those four walls, but now the screen here, that I'm living mental health and advocacy every day. It's natural. And if you might be surprised, you too, in your own way, we all have our ways of being supportive to each other. And so I always say, if you think you might be interested in mental health, please join. We need you. We need other people supporting other people, because like it was already said, we all need a therapist. So please join in, advocate, educate, and just be open to people getting the care that they need. So I will end my little portion there.
All right. Thank you, Janee, for that story and setting up the clinicians in the person of color community. I mean, that's great. I do have a question. Is there a place where we can find the directory that you had mentioned?
Yes, I can type it in the chat. If
that would be awesome. Perfect. Thank you. And our last speaker is Valarie James, MSW, MPH, NASM-CPT. Valarie James is a licensed master's social worker and certified personal trainer in the Grand Rapids area. She provides short-term therapy as a behavioral health specialist for Spectrum Health Kentwood Family Medicine. She has a passion for bridging the gap between mental health and fitness and is the owner of VSJ Fitness, in which she offers personal training and creative fitness opportunities online and within the community. Valarie, are you all set?
I am. Can you all see it?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Start from the beginning. All right. First, I just want to say thank you so much for having me to be part of this panel. Even though I put it together, but it's just such an honor and just, oh my gosh, I am just like, as I'm sitting here and taking this information and just like, I just cannot believe that I'm just learning from Dr. Newton. I know Janee, but like her wealth of experience and knowledge, like I've known her since high school and she's been someone who I looked up to, and I've told her this before, we ran track together. So it's just like, yes, so just be on the same panel as her. And then Ebony, oh my gosh, girl, we are gonna connect more after this. So thank you so much for the information about EMDR. Like this, oh my gosh. So thank you all. And thank you to everyone who are here and is listening and taking in this information. Like we know you could be doing anything else tonight, but we know that, you know, learning and talking about mental health is so important. And we hope that this information, you can apply it, take it back to your family, your friends and community, and let's keep this conversation going. So I quickly want to start off with just sharing like why I even started VSJ Fitness and then tie into my role as a behavioral health specialist. So I started VSJ Fitness in 2015. Originally, it was a blog to combine my two passions. Okay, just a second, y'all. This is a time King wanted to come and try to interrupt. So just 1 second.
Hi, King. King is adorable, by the way. You didn't get to see him, but he is one of the cutest dogs ever.
Oh my gosh, he was quiet this entire time. Okay, let's keep it going. So yes, I started VSJ Fitness in 2015. Originally, it was a blog to combine the importance of mental health and also being physically active. And I started it around the time when I was dealing with my own struggles with depression. I was in a very, very toxic relationship. You know how that can go. And essentially, it just left me in a place where I just felt emotionally broken and physically weak. And I felt like I just didn't know what life meant at that time anymore. And I'm just now getting to the point where I'm feeling comfortable being very vulnerable and honest about that, because I know that I am not the first person to go through that. And even though I would like to say I was the last person, we just know that the reality is that it's not. But at the same time, just want to be able to share my story, that it is possible to overcome it. So that's how dark it was for me during that time. And what helped me work through that period of my life was teaching Zumba for the Croc Center. For whatever reason, whenever that music came on, we started dancing and moving. Like I didn't even care what I was thinking about prior to that, or like what to expect afterwards. In that moment, I felt strong, I felt beautiful, I felt confident. It felt good just to smile again, both internally and externally. And so I knew that I was onto something. And in addition to that, I was also in counseling. You know, they say every therapist has a therapist, and I wasn't a therapist at the time, but I had randomly found, like, I just need to find someone. And I remember just doing a quick Google search and was like, okay, who accepted Blue Cross at the time, who had availability, and I got connected to my therapist. And so that was, I said like 2015. And so to this day, I still have a connection with him. So he is like a hidden gem, but it was just like, I believe that everything happens for a reason, but I was very, very lucky to have found him when I did. And so with the combination of the therapy and just still doing my thing with Zumba, other women just started coming up to me, just sharing about their life stories and their journeys and saying how I was helping them. And I'm just like, not sharing with them, like I had my own things going on, but I knew that this was a greater purpose. You know, me standing here, just leading an hour of fitness, I knew that I was also providing healing for other women who were coming to my classes. And so that's what led me to create the blog. And I was like, I hate social media. I'm not that whole, like, I'm trying to get creative like today, because I know I have to be present. I'm learning, you know, the TikToks and stuff. But at that time I was like, I can't be consistent with the blog. I need face-to-face interaction. And so I decided to become a certified personal trainer. And as a personal trainer, before we even start the workout, we have to do what's called initial consultation. And so even though like it was supposed to be 30 minutes of me getting your health history, explaining like why you want to, work with me, it ended up turning into like hour-long consultations. I mean, just the women I was working with just pouring out, whether it's self-esteem, self-image, lack of support, relationship dynamics, you name it. And they always said that I was easy to talk to. Now, during this time, my background, I started off just working in ER, so working in the hospital, so dealing with crisis situations. So dealing with psych assessments, social, or those who are suicidal, homicidal, psychotic, and then trying to find the appropriate crisis treatment, whether it was inpatient hospitalization or outpatient treatment. But then during those conversations too, I just wanted to like learn more about the patients I was working with. And so even though we'll set them up with services, it's like, okay, a week later, they'll come right back into the ER. I'm like, why there's so much readmission for the same issues? Like, where's this disconnect? And so I always want to be a part of that continuation of care to help our patients not have to return back to the ER. And so that's what led me to my position as a behavioral health specialist. So during that time, I never in a million years thought I was going to be a therapist. Like even in grad school, I was like, I'm all for like advocacy. I'm about policies. Like I wanted to, work for the state. I wanted those types of opportunities. And then I remember like my last year, one of my professors telling me, she was like, Val, if you want a job as a social worker, you're going to have to go the clinical route. So I was like, dang, okay, all right, let me pass my test and get my hours in. And so, I didn't realize that my experience working like as a Zumba instructor at the time, turned personal trainer, and an ER social worker was all going to tie into me. So like, you know what, let me pursue this route of, becoming a therapist. And so that's where an opportunity presented itself for Spectrum Health. And it has been the most rewarding experience so far. And as we mentioned, just being a Black woman in this space too, literally just 2 days ago, I had two patients say, just thank me for just being in this position. I'm like, y'all trying to make me emotional. I'm here to help you out. So I just believe that everything happens for a reason. And so this is all under BSJ Fitness and also Valarie James as a licensed master social worker. So also what's unique about my position is that I'm working in the healthcare field. And so when I'm working so closely with providers, I have to have those conversations of, okay, yes, you have this diagnosis of, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, you name it. But at the same time, we're also dealing with your medications. We're also talking about your body mass index, like how that also plays a role in the type of medications we're going to prescribe, your eating habits, how you're sleeping. And so I am also creating treatment plans for my patients that includes like the importance of becoming physically active and the importance of eating healthier because of these chronic diseases. And so I do plan to share that information as part of my presentation, is like how fitness also impacts our mental health. And also we got to talk about these chronic diseases that can come from certain mental illness diagnosis and the lack of being physically active. So yes. And I do have a lot of information. I promise I have a lot of slides. I'm gonna skim through this because I know we only have 20 minutes. So the first definition I want to talk about is what is mental health. I know Dr. Newton already covered this, but the main definition that I want to focus on is the second one, where the World Health Organization, they define mental health as a state of well-being, which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stressors of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. So that definition is what I try to guide. That's what guides me as either a therapist, working with my patients, or also my clients for personal training. And so I feel that because we have this right to basically become physically and mentally happy, to live a holistically healthy life, like we should be able to have access to these types of services without limitation or restriction. even though this is a definition, we know there's systems in place that makes it challenging, but at least with according to what this definition says, we have that right. And so I feel like it's my role within this position to empower my clients. So with this definition, so this is our starting point. So I actually want to go right into the mental illness and chronic diseases portion, because again, I deal with this, I see this every day. And so I first want to start off with saying, like, people who have, you know, serious mental illness, such as major depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, they often have poor physical health and experience significant psychiatric, social, and cognitive disabilities. Now, there's tons of reasons why this is the case. You know, this is from due to lack of education, just not knowing where to start, lack of access, social economic status, and as Ebony mentioned, systemic issues and lack of cultural competency. So if you have all these things that you feel that's already against you, of course you're going to have poor physical health. Of course you're going to be live a sedentary lifestyle. Of course you're not going to follow through. So then it's going to lead to those chronic illnesses. So, and, you know, of course, it's common to see someone who got a chronic disease diagnosis, it leads to depression and anxiety. So, for example, someone who has COPD, they tend to have anxiety. I mean, it's a breathing disorder. So, of course, you're where you can't breathe, they're going to panic. So it's common to see that. But you're also at a risk of developing certain or some physical illnesses with a mental health diagnosis, such as depression. And so it can be flipped the other way around. So such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, stroke, Alzheimer's. Those are all examples of chronic diseases that are linked to mental illnesses, such as being diagnosed with depression. And so you'll see here, I have a chart of the percentage of those who have a mood disorder and the diagnosis that's associated with that. So again, it's just important just to highlight how mental illness, it can affect us physically if it goes unaddressed and untreated. So a little bit more about, I know it's a lot of information, so just a little bit more about how mental illness, you know, can impact us. So for starters, you know, some people are prescribed psychiatric medications such as antidepressants. I'll just one example. And so they can come with a huge range of side effects such as weight gain, irregular heartbeats. Again, you're increasing your vulnerability to a range of physical conditions. And that's again coming from lack of follow-up, not following through, not just again not knowing what to do and how to manage that mental illness and also your chronic disease. Again, the poor habits, the impact on social and cognitive functioning, lack of motivation also comes with certain diagnoses. And then what's really scary to know is that those with serious mental illness, they are at a higher risk of premature mortality compared to the rest of the population. So on average, people with severe mental illness, they die 10 to 15 years earlier compared to others. And again, that's due to those factors I listed before. And so this is just to show you why it's so important to, one, pay attention to, you know, if your doctor is saying like, oh, yes, you are at risk of heart disease, or yes, you do have some underlying depression there, to follow up and follow through with receiving that treatment. And so now I'm going to talk about the physical inactivity part. So by the time the patients come to me and I'm asking them, I literally during my assessments, I have to ask them, what is your physical activity engagement like? And so I ask them like, how many minutes per week do they work? How do you work out? How often, how many days per week? And then a lot of times I get 0. And so that physical inactivity, that sedentary lifestyle, I mean, you just sitting on the couch, you have a desk job, you're not doing anything, you may go for a 5-minute walk here and there, that's not enough, because it causes, it's a major cause to morbidity and mortality, and people who have substantially increased risk of developing those diabetes, heart diseases, you know, just basically all these different types of chronic diseases by choosing to remain physically inactive. And so the effects of just choosing to have a healthier diet and exercising, especially when you have a diagnosis of some sort of chronic disease with mental illness, there has been research that's shown that you can make significant progress. So really briefly, a study that is one of my favorite studies I was able to find is about a diabetes prevention program, and they selected 300 participants. It was a randomized trial, and so one group was in an intensive diet and exercise intervention, while the other ones were in some form of medical management group, and they received metformin. And so what they were able to find was that those with the intensive lifestyle intervention, so that basically the incidence of diabetes was only 14% compared to those in the other group that did just the medical management and just received the metformin. All right, so here are just some benefits of physical fitness. So it releases those feel-good endorphins, which is a natural brain chemical that enhances a sense of well-being. So that's that feeling like, "Ooh, yes, I just got through that Zumba class. Yes, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I'm loving how I'm looking." That's why it's those endorphins. Also, when you become physically active, it takes your mind off the worries, because you just get away from the cycle of those negative thoughts that feed the depression, anxiety. So I tell my patients, depression, anxiety is like a little seed that the moment you start to water it, but just those constant thoughts, it grows and grows and grows to something big. And then that's when it affects your mood, how you respond, and how you treat yourself. So just engaging in some sort of physical activity can take your mind off of that. Also, you start to gain confidence because you're meeting your exercise goals, or different challenges. It all can boost your self-confidence. So with my clients for personal training, let's say the first week they can't do one burpee, but then by 3 weeks later they can do 10 burpees. They feel good about themselves because they have reached this goal. And so it's all about feeding yourself with these positive moments so you can overcome those challenges that come with depression, anxiety. Also, you get to become more social. I know that we had to navigate with the virtual, being creative, and now we're back outside. But at least, now we can say we can become more socially active with our community. And so, because with depression, you tend to isolate. You feel like something is wrong with you, or like you don't belong. And at least when you come into my class, oh no, everybody is going to feel welcome. I lead with love. I try to interact with everyone. And so, yes, that's another reason why you should become physically active. And then also get to cope in a healthy way by taking steps away from unhealthy behaviors such as alcohol consumption, that emotional poor eating, and also substance use. So when people tend to start with saying okay, Val, I'm going to start working out, then they realize, okay, I also need to eat healthy. So it's just those small steps leads to the bigger picture of reaching your goals. And when I say goals, I always like to say wellness goals, because it's more than just the numbers. It's more than, oh, I need to lose weight, this and the third. No, I want you to feel good about yourself. Because you look good, and I want you to feel good during this. And so according some research from the clinical psychiatry case studies, they showed that at least for some, just engaging in moderate intensity exercise, it can be beneficial for depression and result in happier moods. And here are just some hypotheses. I'm just going to read one because there's a lot of information. But again, I just find this all just so interesting when it comes to understanding why fitness is so important when it comes to, overcoming depression. So the thermogenic hypothesis, it suggests that the rise in the core body temperature, so following some sort of exercise, is responsible for the reduction in depression. So basically the increase in temperature of certain parts of our brain, I think more so like this, the brainstem, it can lead to an overall feeling of relaxation and reduction in muscular tension. And then another one, I'm gonna do the distraction hypothesis. This hypothesis states that physical activity serves as a distraction from worries and depressing thoughts. Distracting activities as a mean of coping with depression has been shown to have more positive influence on the management of depression and leads to greater results of reduction in symptoms compared to journal keeping. And also, if any of you want this information, I'd be happy to send it out so you can learn about the different hypotheses. And this is all evidence-based research as to why involving yourself in fitness can help you with reducing the signs and symptoms associated with depression, anxiety. So I also have a video, but I don't think I have time. But just for like the very basic starting. So this is for someone who has lived a sedentary lifestyle. You, like I said, you sit on the couch, office desk, you maybe walk to the mailbox and you come back in. So it's just starting out with an exercise program of just 20 minutes per day, 3 times per week, some sort of mod intense workout. So you can do a quick 20-minute Zumba with me, is enough to significantly reduce symptoms of depression. So 20 minutes. I'm not saying come out and do a full hour with me just yet. We can start for 20 minutes, but it is a start, okay? Again, that physical activity, it boosts the brain's dopamine, the serotonin levels, and it all affects our focus and our ability to attention. And it also helps those who have ADHD. So I am working with a lot of more adults who are just recently diagnosed with ADHD. They weren't tested as a kid, but they recognize the signs and symptoms as an adult growing older. And so, yes, this is something that's more prevalent in adults that I've been seeing within my patients. So again, this is, yes, so just starting with 20 minutes per day will be beneficial. So I like to share this now for my providers. So if any of you are, if you are a therapist, if you are a physician, and you want to start recommending your clients or your patients to start exercising, so here are some things to consider. First, they are going to lack motivation to begin an exercise program. So when I'm working with my patients, so meaning like they haven't signed, they're not my clients. So when you sign as a client, it's like, no, you are signing this waiver saying you're gonna work out with me. But as a therapist, when I'm working with my patients, it takes about 2 to 3 sessions before I'm like, okay, did you start? Did you start? Did you start? And they finally say, okay, Val, I did start. So they're gonna like that motivation. So it's up. So that's when you really need to continue to emphasize the importance of starting to exercise when it comes to developing their treatment plan. So other research say like you can even encourage them to start with 30 minutes per day, at least 5 days per week. And so for my patients, I ask them like, what do you like to do? A lot of them start off with saying they like to go on long walks. And I do support that as a starting point. I say, grab your earpieces, your AirPods, whatever you have, find your favorite podcast, find your favorite playlist, and start walking at least 30 minutes per day. And then trying that 5 days per week. Because once you start with something that you enjoy and you start to notice some positive changes within that, that is going to encourage you and motivate you to want to do more. I promise you. So yes, it is okay to start there. So, but if that's too much, then it's okay to say at least 20 minutes, 3 times per week. Just start with 20 minutes. So gauge where your clients or your patients, where they're at. And then just encourage them to do some goal setting as well. So you're creating their treatment plans, whatever template you use, just say like, okay, this is your goal. You're going to do 3 exercise sessions per week, and you find your comfortable pace, and then whatever time you feel is more manageable for you. So that's where like the SMART goals come in. So start implementing those SMART goals, making sure that they are specific, they're measurable, that they can really do it, realistic, and it's timely. And so, and just, and then once they become comfortable and confident, again, they can increase their frequency. And then also just reminding them that the exercise doesn't need to be lengthy. Like I said, they don't have to come out and do a 45-minute or workout, or, they can start where they're at, but at least just getting them started, it will enhance their mood. They will start to feel good about themselves. All right, so this is my conclusion. Physical activity and fitness has an important role to play in the lives of individuals with serious mental illness. We must address health and mental health from a holistic approach in order to improve the quality of life for the populations we all serve. So even if you are not a therapist, but you're still involved in the community in some capacity, you are serving the population. And so by incorporating physical activity into treatment goals and mental health services, we can substantially improve the physical health outcomes of people with serious health who already are at risk of some sort of health outcomes. and becoming knowledgeable of fitness classes, especially the free ones that's going on in the community. Grandpa's Parks are hosting some free classes. I'm doing like $5 classes in the community. It's a great way to encourage your clients and patients to attend, because cost is an issue. I know some gyms can be expensive, but like at least during the summer, like there are accessible classes available, and also certain bus lines too are helping decreasing those access to those classes. And then also as in helping professionals, like we also need to exercise and to promote healthy lifestyles and model that self-care practice. So like we can't be preaching, well, you need to do this, but then you're going home eating whatever and not doing anything. So your clients and patients, they look up to you. So when they see that you're modeling that self-care, they're also going to follow suit. Again, this is how you can contact me for personal training. This is my website, bsjfitness.com, and my email. And then also a quick plug, I am doing a glute camp, which is Sunday, June 27th. It's at the 555 Monroe lot, and it's only $5 per person. So my mission is to inspire the everyday woman to reach their wellness goals through support, empowerment, and motivation. So with my glute camp, I always say we are here to embrace our assets. So meaning you're coming out, you're loving who you are, where you're at today, and you're having fun. So if you got the curves, you know, you're feeling good about yourself, then hey, that's coming out. It's a safe space for all of us, for all fitness levels. So come on out for the glute camp. And you can find that on my Facebook and also Instagram, BSJ Fitness.
Great. Thank you, Valarie, for going over all the benefits.
I was trying to make sure I wasn't going over time.
No, we're good. Thank you, everyone, for your insights. We'll open it up for questions in just a little bit, but we do want to announce our winners first. So we're going to give away 2 journals. The first one is going to go to Chandra Ridgely. So you're the winner. We'll email you and then get some contact information from you so that we can send that off. And then the second one who's getting a journal is Tanisa Fry. So that is our second winner. So that was Chandra Ridgely and Tanisa Fry. So we will contact you, and then, all right, Chandra's here. And then now the $50. So those were from Dr. Newton, those journals. And then Ebony from Resilience is going to give the $50 e-card, and that is going to Alexis Baskin. So Alexis, we're going to send your email to so, Alexis, we're going to send your email to Ebony, and then she will then send you that gift card to Amazon. So
thank you so much.
To all of our winners. All right. If you'd like to, I think we've got a small enough group that we can probably open it up for questions. I had a couple that I'd like to ask, and then we can get it going from there. So Ebony, does EMDR work the same for those 3 different types of trauma, or is it like more of a requirement for a different amount of sessions or something else? Or does it really depend on the individual as to how those EMDR sessions kind of work for those traumas?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all individualized, right? Because remember that everybody has different experiences, so their perceptions may be different. Some people can come in there and process something in a couple sessions. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's all dependent on the individual, but it addresses all of those traumas. It actually, like I said, you can come to me for anxiety. You can come to me for, you know, anger, depression. But guess what I do? If you're interested in EMDR, I'm going to pull it back to the earliest time that you felt that way or experienced those feelings or had those sensations in your body. And then we're going to go back in and process that. So, yep, it's all dependent on the individual, how long it takes, and it can range, you know. So, but yeah, but for everything, so I don't utilize it for these areas yet because I'm not trained in using it in these certain areas, but there are, unless the symptoms overlap with trauma. So I am just a big trauma. If all of my clients come to me, I've just decided to just go strictly with trauma. So, but if they, there are other areas that you can utilize this with. So for example, like eating disorders, I know the baseline of eating disorders, but I'm not, you come to me for eating disorder, I'm going to refer out. But you can use it for eating disorders, substance use and abuse addictions. Okay. It's amazing what you can utilize this for. Just a variety. Everything you can think of, it can be used for, because it's all experience-based and memory-based. So yeah.
Yeah, so essentially you're changing the memories of those events. So
Nope, not changing them. They still gonna remember them, but they will no longer be triggered. They will no longer have those sensations in their body when they think of that event. They no longer will avoid particular places that bring up memories of it. They no longer will they won't be triggered. They'll be desensitized because we have went into that memory and taken out what needed to come with them, what they needed to learn from it, and the rest of it's getting thrown out. The stuff that's getting thrown out are those ugly images that are stuck in their head. Okay. I had an individual where, they were with their parent on at a hospital bed, and they were there when they passed away. That image was stuck in their mind for years. Okay. So that image gone. You just take, but they still had all the good experiences with their mom, all those great memories, but that image that was taunting them, completely gone. So the images, the sensations in your body, that negative belief you have about yourself, it's so interesting, this negative cognition, because we tend to blame ourselves when we're victims, right? Isn't that crazy? So we'll be, oh, it was my fault. I should have did something different. I'm stupid. I'm da-da-da-da. By the time we reprocess that event, they like, look, I did the best I could. So, and that's what we want. So nope, it don't mess up your memory. It's not hypnosis. You don't go nowhere. You're with me, you're present, but you take out of it that information that you needed to learn from it, and all the rest of that stuff that's negatively impacting you is thrown out.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Look, you get me on a rampage again. I love it too much. I think my clients be like, listen, I think you're more excited about this than me. I'm just like, look, just go with it. Okay, we good.
So did you do this therapy prior to being interested in it, or was it something that you just were interested in because of what the benefits that you saw from others or hearing about it?
Nope. So I had only heard about it one time. I really did a lot of research on it. And then being transparent, when I started looking at it, reading on it, I was like, you know what? And before going on my own, I started addressing my own trauma with the EMDR. Okay. Because I did a lot of, you got to, just like Janee said, there's some things that we adapt to. We adapt to survival mode. We adapt to the superhero cape and, maneuvering. So it had been a long time before I had been in therapy, and talk therapy is good, but I'm also I can manipulate the heck out of myself with my prefrontal cortex. Okay. So I need something more. And so EMDR assisted me with, all them traumas. I mean, I'm still working through some things, but for the majority of it, it's been great. It's been amazing. And that's what I put in the comment section, is because when you have a therapist, when you're doing your own work, I do supervision as well. And I tell them, you make sure you get you a therapist. That's what I'm going to strongly encourage you, because there is nothing more credible than you coming to your client with you got some rapport with them, and you self-disclose, look, everybody need to be in therapy. I got a therapist. We all need therapists. It don't mean nothing's wrong with you. It's very normal. You got a doctor that you go visit, don't you? When something wrong. So, or you just go there for regular checkups. Sometimes you just need a therapist to empower you and encourage you and keep it moving. Remind you, girl, you remember that coping skill? Okay, use that. You good. So it don't mean nothing. All these labels just constantly just getting thrown. So no, it's just important to practice what we preach up in here. And that makes you so much more credible, because your client's gonna look at you like, oh yeah, I believe her. And there's no reason not to trust what she's trying to teach me. And same thing, Valarie, you said, we up in here eating cupcakes in between clients and stuff, but yet we trying to, I see you, Janee. Look, but it's essential. That self-care is essential. I do yoga and medicine. I try to do all of that. Everything is so important that you practice what you preach, because if not, they can see through that. They can see through it. I worked at the juvenile for years. They seen right through individuals that weren't there for them. Okay, so just practice what you preach. That's what I encourage. It makes your words more credible when you've experienced yourself. So yes, I did. I do EMDR therapy still, even with my therapist, even though, you know, I've been learned about it and been trained or whatever. So it's just and I love it. I believe in it. You know?
Yeah, I feel the passion for it, and that's why I asked the
You sure
question.
I'm just not real loud, Dawn?
No, there's passion there. Passion is awesome. You can feel it. All right, I have a question for Janee. You said you had worked with nonverbal clients or babies. Is there any special training that you need to do for that? Or was that just part of what you were doing because of where you were working?
Yes. So for me, I joined. I started at VA Block at St. John's, and so they added that program a few years back. And so to do it, I was not specially trained. I did have to go through a lot of trainings, though. There is infant mental health specialty that you gain that I had to go through, just learning about early childhood development, but like even deeper, you know, issues related to child development and learning what's healthy and the stages of change and all of that. And so I was able to learn about how to really help those children and their attachment with parents, because really the work was with the parents, or the caregivers, I should say, and helping them work with that child and using play. It was a lot of playing. And so I did, you know, training in play therapy. I am not a certified play therapist, but I have that, you know, that skill background.
That's great. All right, Valarie, does physical activity allow us to focus because it kind of takes us out of that kind of fight or flight mode, or is it some other things? You know, you had the list of the areas that it helps, but is it really because it kind of your brain chemistry is almost modified to take us out of the negative areas there?
Yes, because as you are moving, you are focusing on what's being presented to you. So I like to use Zumba as an example, because as you're in that class, you're trying to follow the instructor. There's no way you're going to be thinking about, oh, Joe from what he did back there. Like, no, you're trying to keep up with the moves. And so as you are learning, you're engaging with the instructor in the class. That's why that distraction hypothesis is there, because you are focused on what makes you feel good right now, and is blocking. Yes, it is essentially blocking out that negative thought because you are in tune with what's going on in the present.
Gotcha. Now, how does that align with like doing a walk or doing a hike, where you can definitely be in your thoughts while you're doing that, as opposed to kind of in that class having somebody work your butt off, right? You know, how is that different? And does that get us the same level or enough of the change for it to be helpful?
It's not enough. So if you notice that I mentioned is the moderate to intense type of workout. And so walking is not a vigorous workout, but it still it gives you a chance to get moving. So even on your walk, even if you do have your podcast and things, you're still going to think about what's going on, but at the same time, because your blood is flowing, especially if you're walking, if you're a person who likes to pay attention to like your surroundings, your environment, the scenery, then that can help you get you to that point to black out. But definitely I always encourage my patients to do more than that.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. I think that's very helpful. All right.
Ebony laughing. What's funny?
What?
Think about her exercise.
Oh. All right. Are there any other questions from the audience? And we can stop the recording if you want to ask like a personal question that we don't, if you don't want it to be, you know, broadcast or recorded. So if we can